So, okay.
Superb, Tim, you are doing a fabulous job here. And we're just a minute off 12 o'clock, so we'll just give it a moment more to make sure as many attendees are in the call as possible, and then we will get started. And that's my 12 o'clock countdown. It started straight away. Hey, I have the pleasure today to chair this technical talk on lessons and barriers in moving to a circular economy in the process sector. This talk is organised by the Sustainability and Environmental Working Group of the Process Industries Division of the IMechE. And we'll come on to that a little bit later, but the treat here today is this is one of four. This is one of a series of four. This is our starting talk where we will focus on water, food and drink and pharmaceuticals. But later on throughout the year, culminating in a final full panel session, we will be really looking to kind of compare and contrast where we have similar challenges and where we can learn lessons and share on examples from each of the different areas of the process industries. Before I properly introduce our speakers, I'm going to just move on to the next page where we'll just get a look at a few housekeeping rules because these are very important. So one of the things about this is that today's webinar will be recorded. I will be doing my best to monitor all the questions in the Q&A chat, so please submit your questions. Our speakers have fantastic presentations that are full of great information, and we really encourage to hopefully manage our time incredibly well so that we can answer a few of your questions as well at the same time. So I love the fact that the Sustainability and Environmental Working Group has the vision treasuring our planet of future generation. And that's going to bring me on right now to our three speakers. So I absolutely love a phrase that Alan Barton uses, and I've written it down here. My career has led me towards being passionate about this wonderful planet that we live on. And I think if I don't say anything else, Alan, I think that says it all about really where your heart is and how you feel so passionately about this topic area. You're a very experienced engineer, now running your own consultancy, member of the IMechE Process Industries Board, and you really bring the water aspect, if you like, to today's presentation. We're also extremely lucky to have Martin, who chairs the IMechE Food and Drink and Engineering Committee at the IMechE, recently retired, but an international brewery design engineer who's worked with many multinationals and also has a specialism in managing projects in sort of third world and developing countries. So some really great perspectives to get there. To bring the pharmaceutical side of our presenters today, we have Daniel, who's an associate director at Garden & Theobald. And I think, gosh, you've got, well, I won't give your age away, Daniel, but I think it's well over a decade in track record in science and pharmaceutical sectors. And I know that a huge number of your projects have been about building, sort of improving sustainability in the built environment. I'm the person who's going to try and hold us all together as we go through today's talk. My name's Claire Edwards and I chair the IMechE Pharmaceutical Committee, of which Daniel partners and helps me with that. So I think that's given a flavour of our speakers today, and now it's time. So Alan, can you please help kick us off? Tell us a little bit about the circular economy.
Good morning. Click this. Bear with me. It's not behaving. Good morning. Well, our role is to set the scene and try and explain why do we need a circular economy. And this is a picture of our home, and our home needs your help. Oh, shit. No. Gone somewhere. Right. How do I get rid of that? No.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, 100, 101, 102, 103, 104, 105, 106, 107, 108, 109, 110, 111, 112, 113, 114, 115, 116, 117, 118, 119, We could see your slides, Alan, and they were moving.
Yeah,
So
no,
just
I'm
if that helps.
trying to get rid of it. Anyway, but we lived in harmony with our planet till humankind's population grew and developed. And we now have gone outside what the planet can sustain, particularly with regard to greenhouse gases, the diversity of our animals, the use of our land and water. And particularly of worry is we've gone outside of what this planet can sustain on green water, which is the water that grows our crops. And we have gone outside on the amount of fertilizers we use, and we have now produced an enormous amount of toxic materials. And our population has gone up, and it rocketed after the First World War and continues to go up tremendously. And there is a projection that we may get to around 12 billion people. And we now produce a lot of energy. And that results in greenhouse gases. And that results in our temperature going up. And we don't have weather anymore. We have records. And as we get warmer, our oceans will increase, and it's just a question of by how much. And we now have plundered the wilderness, and almost 50% of our planet is set aside to growing our crops, and we plunder the oceans. And we are potentially at the start of the 6th mass extinction event, and our ingenuity has rocketed, as has our ability to produce goods and services. And in the past 6 years, we've used over 500 billion tons of material, and that's nearly as much as the entirety of the 20th century. And for all 8 billion people on this planet to live to the same as the average of the top 20 developed nations, how many planets would we need? Well, the answer is 3.6. And if we get to 12, it's 5.5. And in 2023, we produced 2.1 billion tons of municipal solid waste. And we're starting to worry about the amount of land that we have to grow our foods. And we are even more worried because with the less green water in the future, will we grow our crops? So we really do need to start treasuring our planet. And we need to look at the ecologies of our planet, and we need to get them back to being circular. But we need a way of managing our home in a circular way. We need a circular economy. Because since the Industrial Revolution, we've had a linear economy where we take materials, make them into something, and then we just throw them away. But we really do need to circulate our planet's resources. And we need to re-establish the carbon balance that we had, carbon dioxide balance that we've had. And if we can, try and reduce it to pre-industrial levels. And I think we need to look at the ecologies of obviously carbon dioxide and greenhouse gases, the natural world, material resources, water, atmosphere, and population. And with regard to greenhouse gases, we obviously need to get our energy from the sun and from gravity. And we can grow biomass, which we can burn, or we can turn it into liquids and gases. So we must deliver on our COP promises, focus on all greenhouse gases, focus on all sectors but the reduce greenhouse gases, and develop a joined up plan. And if we can, get back to pre-industrial levels. The natural world, well, we've got to stop chopping down rainforests and plundering the oceans, and realise as our temperature increases, we'll have more forest fires. And we've got to try and get more of our carbon dioxide and carbon back into the land or into water. So we must deliver on our COP promises, and we must stop reducing and re-establish the natural world and try and absorb as much carbon as we can. As far as the material resources go, well, simply that word needs to disappear, and we need to regard everything as a resource. And if this report is right, in recent years, we've actually gone backwards. But we do need, for all goods, all manufactured goods and all services, we need the producers, the customers, and everybody involved in the whole cycle to work together to achieve that. But we must remember that a lot of the decisions are made in the design stage. We've got to design things so they can be taken apart and the materials used again. Now, I also believe we've got to start treasuring our planet's resources for the future, because our resources are finite and we mustn't dispose of them beyond the reach of future generations. We put phosphorus fertilizer on the land at the moment, and where's most of it end up? In rivers, in oceans. We put chemicals and plastics into the oceans, and we should be careful what we throw into landfill, because if we put organic material in, it produces methane, and if it's corrodable, it'll end up as a metal salt, and that salt will end up in the oceans. And we shouldn't put inorganic fractions, including clean plastics, into incineration. What happens if you put a mobile phone into an incinerator? Where does the indium go? Well, its boiling point is above the temperature of the incinerator, so it will stay as a solid probably, and it will then end up in the aggregate, which gets dispersed. Just talking of mobile phones, the natural resources of 6 of the elements found in a mobile phone are set to run out in the next 100 years. Indium is set to run out in 20 years. So I believe we need to research, design and develop repositories for the materials we can't currently separate, so we can store them for future generations. So first thing we must try and do is try and reduce consumption, and then treasure our resources and produce no waste. As far as water goes, we've got to stop using water to convey our waste into the oceans. And we've got to realise we're going to get more extreme weather events. And we've got to realise globally there are more and more people that don't have access to water and are obviously worried about our crops. And in the UK, we've got to realise we've got various sources of pollution. There's more pollution from agricultural runoff in our rivers than sewage, and there's more sewage than highway runoff. But we've got all three of those contribute to it, as do the synthetic chemicals. So we must treasure our water. Water costs us on average £1.30 a day. And just imagine how much you spend on coffee. So we really do need to start focusing on nature-based solutions to help prevent flooding. And we've got to stop pollution. And we've got to manage our water. And if we could get the global temperature down, it would be great. Atmosphere, I'm encouraged by the Mayor of London who introduced his ultra-low emission zone, because he has reduced the NOx levels in the centre of London by 53%, whereas other cities aren't quite so good. So we really must stop polluting our air and strive for clean air and clean technologies, including transport. I've travelled the world, and the one thing I observe is wherever I go, there are a lot of people. And in population growth, it's been the elephant in the room, because I'm only aware of 2 people that have talked about it, the previous Duke of Edinburgh and Sir David Attenborough, because they both realise where there are people, there are not animals. So we must stop. Well, we must provide a reasonable lifestyle for all globally and better education, and then hopefully our birth rate will equal approximately to our death rate. And we really should have all of our ecologies circular and a way of managing them circularly. What happens if we don't? Well, will we be able to sustain our current way of life? Question mark. Is humankind doomed? Question mark. Will our oceans rise to the point where billions of people have to migrate? Will we have enough food? Will we have more and more forest fires? Will we completely destroy the Great Barrier Reef? How many of our animal friends will be left? Will we run out of critical materials? Will we end up like Easter Island, once a vibrant society, but when Captain Cook arrived, he found a bunch of miserable subsistence farmers? Just imagine the transition they went through. Or will we end up with something far worse? Are we heading for a train crash? Are we prepared to pay the extra money that's going to cost us to live in a sustainable way? Is it inevitable? Question mark. Or is there hope? Well, I think there were 3 moments when humankind achieved incredible things. The United States in World War II increased its production of ships and planes incredibly. We did put a man on the moon, and we did very quickly develop a vaccine for a very nasty virus. We need the same mindset applied to living in harmony with our planet. And we do need a behavioural change programme and a sense of urgency. And we need it now, not when it's too late. We have to deliver on all our goals. And I believe, provided we get on with it and get on with it now, there is hope. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alan. That was just a brilliant introduction. And wow, 2.1 billion tons of waste, and sort of certainly thinking about what we're doing and how we're caring for our water and the impact we're going to have on society. Great way to set the tone, Alan. Thank you very much. So, Martin, tell us a little bit about what's particular in the food and drink sector.
Okie doke. Can you see my screen? That's the main thing.
We can. It's clear. You're fit to go.
Anyway, welcome to everyone. I'm chair of the Food and Drink Engineering Committee, the IMechE, and we are the biggest as far as process industries are concerned. Our industry is bigger than the aerospace and the automotive sectors combined. So therefore, we should have some easy wins due to the amount of waste that we produce. But first of all, let me say welcome to our friends from the Far East. There's quite a few on the list I see. So Kong Hee Fat Choi for the Chinese New Year. So there's a few facts about the food and drink sector. Worldwide, the food and drink sector is by far the largest in industrial groups, with a total turnover estimated $8 trillion per annum. That's quite massive, isn't it? In 2019, the World Economic Forum estimated the monetary value of food wasted was $936 billion per annum. And if you take into account environmental and health issues, knocks it up, they say, by 20%, but it takes it well over $1 trillion per annum wasted in the food sector, food and drink sector. In the same year, 690 million people went hungry. That's a horrible fact. But it shows you what our targets are. Linear model here, it's a take, make, dispose one with the which our industry has been based on over years, and it's the discarding area that we got to look at in particular. So why ditch the linear model? As the world's population grows and food becomes scarce, the linear economy will be unsustainable, undervaluing finite resources and causing harm to natural systems. In past years, the linear model has been useful in supporting a fast-growing population and for fueling economic development and urbanization. But with the ever-increasing population, we are obliged to continue to feed the population, but also to support the environment. The $1 trillion of wasted food is not only due to consumers, but the way food is produced. And that's a direct result of the linear model. But it's not only the factory operators and consumers that have to act, the whole supply chain has to do something. Raw material producers and packaging companies included. There's a fact here that intensive agricultural practices have degraded some 39 million hectares of soil each year. That's over 1.5 times the area of the UK. So, some reason. Well, that's it. Sorry, my screen wouldn't move on. So what is the circular economy? Other names could be zero waste, zero to landfill, sustainable economy. But basically, a circular economy for food mimics natural systems of regeneration so that waste does not exist, but is in fact a feedstock for other systems, for another cycle. So building a circular economy is important if we want to support the global population of tomorrow. It's time to build a sustainable food system where growing, eating and disposal of food creates a robust situation for the economy and for the environment. I think I've lost the... Apologise for this, but I've lost my... Uh, Sorry about that. I lost it. Is it back again?
Yeah, that's back. Thank
Yep.
you.
Okay, sorry about that. Anyway, for some reason, my forward button is not working. So
Bottom left of your presentation.
Martin, if you go
screen
bottom left with your pointer, there's some
yeah,
buttons there you can press. Hover over the bottom left corner. That's it.
okay, well, I don't want to press. There's nothing on there on bottom left, but there you go. Anyway, there you go. So what can we gain by setting up a circular economy in your business? Changing our food system to one based on the principles of circular economy is one of the most powerful things we can do to tackle climate change and to build biodiversity. We can achieve this and provide healthy and nutritious food for all. Now, that's a quote from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, a famous sailor who set up a foundation to foster the circular economy. The circular economy concept is all about making better use of natural resources like forests, soil, water, air, plants, metals, and minerals, and obviously reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Much of it produced by waste food, etc. We've got to protect human health and biodiversity and to boost economy. Here is a food recovery hierarchy in the form of an inverted triangle. The idea here is that you move up the ladder. So if you're using your composting or your material, can it be used for something else like industrial use, making biofuel, feeding animals, etc. So the idea is that you use this to work out how you can better use your waste. The idea also is not to have so much landfill and incineration, which Alan mentioned earlier. So there's a few gains where we can gain in the sector. Produce only what you can sell. So cut surplus output. This is, it's not so easy for farmers to try and predict what they can gain. But with some of the old EU policies of produce as much as you can and we'll pay you for it, whether it's used or not, that's no longer suitable. We've got to produce what we need and what we use and nothing else. So use turn misshapen or ugly vegetables into fresh soups and sauces, for example. It's, basically should not be turned back into compost. They should not be allowed to rot in the ground, producing methane. Let's get out and use them. Can be used to supply meals to the needy, and it's perfectly nutritious. It just doesn't look like supermarkets want it to look like. So there you go. Turn waste foodstuffs into useful byproducts or energy. That's what the whole aim of the game is. At worst, produce bio-friendly fertilizer, reducing the greenhouse gas emissions. And also, if you're in this cycle, why not gain some publicity over it? Let's have some green credentials. We are a green company. We don't waste, we waste less, and get some mileage out of that. Don't forget, remove unnecessary best before dates. I'll put that on. It's a buzzword in most supermarkets at the moment. You can tell when a carrot's got off. You don't need a best before on it to cause people to throw it away. It's let's get rid of those best before dates. Some of the biggest gains can be in the field of food packaging. Using natural packaging materials, biodegradable, strong. So you're talking cardboards, you're talking paper, you're talking seaweed-based materials, mushroom-based materials, to actually will biodegrade very easily. reducing or removing use of secondary packaging. Why if you buy locally, why not use local producers, local suppliers? Don't use secondary packaging. This obviously will save a lot of plastics going to waste that cannot be handled by the local authority disposal areas. That's quite a good saving there. Use lighter glass jars, bottles and cans. Usually needs new technology and gentle handling, etc. But it's big business. You cut 1% off the thickness of your glass bottle, as long as it's strong enough to manage the pressures. Then why not? And apart from recycling bottles and jars into new glass, you can turn your broken cullet into building aggregate. And here's a picture here of like a terrazzo type flooring material made using broken glass. It's a very hard wearing. It looks pretty. It looks good. It's one way of using your broken glass if you can't recycle it. And here's one of glass mulch. Finely cut up broken glass used as a paving material. Very, very worthwhile way of using your materials. Obviously, you can also look at increasing the shelf life of your food by advancements in packaging materials and storage techniques. Don't waste it. Coming soon, we've got a deposit return scheme. This has been used on the continent an awful lot. Oh dear, I've lost it again. Is it?
Yeah, you'll just have to reshare again.
Okay, you there? So I'll get a screen coming up right where I want to press my button. It just pops up in front of me. Anyway, on the 22nd of January this year, the British government approved a deposit return scheme for single-use cans and PET bottles within England and Northern Ireland. It was first proposed by the Conservative Party in 2017, but well used around the continent for a long time before that. I mean, Denmark and Germany is all over there. You pay a deposit on your bottle, you take it back, put it in a machine, and basically you get your money back. The scheme will not include glass bottle returns, so it's a shame the English scheme won't. Scotland are expected to align with England and Northern Ireland when these schemes come into force in October 2027. Wales is investigating its own scheme and may include glass bottle recycling. I think, is it going to encourage people to use glass rather than PET? I don't know. I think you need, we want to reduce the amount of plastics wasted, that's for sure. If we can recover them and reuse them, that's fine. But this has been going on a long time. Why it's taken until now to actually develop this, I don't know.
Martin, we're not seeing your slides, just to let you know in case you don't realise.
I don't realise, sorry. Oh dear. Not seeing anything now. Is that back again?
Yeah, we can see them now. That's brilliant, Martin. You're on the case.
Except I still have this horrible pop-up that comes up the bottom of my screen, which actually keeps me away from my controls. Right, sorry. Can you see you haven't got to pop
keep
over
going.
Yeah,
okay,
keep going.
Good. Okay, sorry about this. So I've just mentioned that places like Denmark have been using this for many, many years. It's quite a good way. It's these machines. People would discard their cans and bottles on the subway system. ladies come along and pick them up and take them in and collect the pennies for them. You know, it looks after itself. Very good. This scheme will have significant benefit by reducing plastics to landfill and general litter, maybe turning back the plastic tide, but at a cost. Some estimate make this to be at least £288 million per annum. I'm having real problems here with this. Okay. Just think about transportation and distribution as well. So perishable foods are vulnerable to loss and require reliable refrigeration, particularly in developing countries where I do a lot of my work. So looking after your refrigeration systems is very, very important to this. This is reducing your greenhouse gas emissions, and also keeping the food in circulation and usable rather than wasted. It's estimated that between 2 and 5% of perishable food shipments are rejected by food buyers. That's quite an interesting figure. But why do people buy them and then reject them for whatever reason, and finding excuses to reject them? Even if these goods can be used in by recovery people, use food for the poor, food for the needy. There's still too much to go around, and a lot will be ploughed back into the ground, which has got to be a bad news. Look at some barriers now. High economic investment is needed at the start in order to change to new products and new technologies. Alan picked that up earlier. We have to fund that and allow for that. The incentives are limited, and there's a limited availability of training on circular economy implementation at the producer state. So basically, we got to provide more training. Maybe this is a government to do this. Maybe big business should do this. Let's get some education out there. Innovations in food packaging materials is important. Since plastic carrier bags have been banned, we've used other things. So with PFAS, for example, people considering reduction of PFAS, we will find alternatives, and we need to find them sooner rather than later. Let's find out better packaging materials. There's insufficient government regulation and financial backing to support the circular economy. What more can the government do? Okay, we're a new government here, and it's been talked about for many, many years. Let's see what this government can come up with. The lack of pressure from the market, limited consumer demand for reducing waste. Why aren't we going to the supermarkets and sort of expressing the need that they're not reducing the price of these end of sell by date products enough? Things like that. Let's get rid of them and use them rather than just waste them. But all support is necessary from all stakeholders. And how do we measure it? Unless we measure the effect of the circular economy, how do we know we're doing the right things? So what can we as producers do to help? Agricultural practices need to be updated. Alan mentioned this. We change animal waste disposal and treatment of unsold edible foodstuffs into energy using anaerobic digestion instead of more usual slurry spreading or ploughing in. It's big money outlay, but worthwhile in the long run. Climate change adaptation, a bit one of the buzzwords at the moment, is finding plants that are hardy and resistant to climate change, soil enhancements, flood prevention planning, etc. Let's do what we can to help the soil. Our recycling infrastructure has to be improved. Many places lack proper recycling centres even. We need to develop new technologies and new products that better use our waste materials as byproducts or raw materials. And we must accrue for the high cost of new product development and new technologies. This can be very expensive. So what can governments do to help? Governments should change consumers' expectations for convenience. Imagine living your life without producing any trash. How would you do it? Better recycling, less secondary packaging, composting. In fact, in France, over the last year, many states, including Brittany, where I have a place, they brought in waste rules where you're not allowed to dispose of food waste with your general refuse. You get fined. So they're encouraging composting, or at least putting it in a compost bin. And it's now against the law not to do that in Brittany. So that's something that could be looked at. The old thing, less secondary packaging. I mean, a lot of supermarkets now are actually taking this secondary packing back at the store. That's a good idea, but it'd be better if it wasn't there in the first place. Food regulations. Can the government do more? How can laws and regulations encourage better practices among companies and consumers? Maybe charge a significant premium for waste and landfill. Obviously, encourage the deposit return schemes, etc. There's lots they could do. I just think they need to do it a little bit quicker. Help keep food processing equipment in service for longer. This is happening at the moment. You have the right to repair laws going through. Encourage maintenance planning rather than planned obsolescence. It all helps. There's a notice of government intervention to the rescue. I've put it there. Charities and food banks and homeless shelters are to receive a fund from the government launched in 2025. The scheme will give grants of £20,000 or more to a not-for-profit redistribution sector in England. This continues a pledge handed over from the last government to this government, and an estimate of 330,000 tonnes of edible food a year are wasted or used for animal feed. This scheme will aim to help charitable groups set up new equipment like hoppers and balers, or train staff and set up new technologies so they can get food that will be wasted to those who need it most. In December, Labour's Circular Economy Minister, Mary Cray, said, with families gathering to celebrate Christmas and the New Year, it's important to remember those in our communities who may be going hungry this festive period. Nobody wants to see good food go to waste, especially farmers who work hard to put food on family tables across the country. Good sentiment, but too little, too late, you think? Should this have been said when people are buying stuff for Christmas? I don't know. It's we got the ideas, we're just a bit slow in putting them out. There's a supporting statement from the drink sector. The drinks industry is under pressure to reduce its carbon footprint, currently measured in tens of millions of metric tons of CO2. We believe that a switch to a circular economy model could reduce drinks industry emissions by half before 2030. This means rethinking packaging, transport and energy, and even agriculture. My sentiment there, save the earth, it's the only planet with beer. That's from a brewery engineer. What I'm suggesting you do now is go away and have a look at the internet. It's too big a subject to cover in a 15-minute presentation. Go and have a look, see what other people are doing. This is something I just picked up on the internet. Food and beverage manufacturers how you can transition to a circular economy, look at ideas like this. See what the big boys are doing. This is a Coca-Cola document. See what they're doing. There's obviously others than these on the internet. Get some ideas and try and put them into practice in your own business. A few references and acknowledgements. This will come in when we put it onto YouTube. find these. It's worth having a look at these good sources of information. So that's me.
That's
And that's
great,
it.
Martin. Thank you very much for giving us a run through food and drink in this topic in that particular area. I'm smiling. Save the Planet is the only planet with beer. So Dan, pharmaceuticals are important. Martin's put his case out on the planet. So tell us a bit about what should this topic mean in pharma? Oh, you're on mute.
Right, yeah, it's hard to beat that comment, but let me try my best. So let me start with a question. When you take a medicine, what do you expect? And I'm sure the majority of you will be saying that I hope it makes me better, or I hope it's of the highest quality. I hope I don't have any side effects. Some of you might take medicines quite regularly and require them to live the life you have. The reason I make these statements is that the priority in the pharmaceutical industry has been the supply of medicines that are safe and reliable. So sustainability in the industry has very much been deprioritized as a result. But as engineers, we should really be looking at circular economy to be weaved into every decision we make, as it is a big industry with big impacts. So how big is the industry? Some stats on the right are of the size of the pharmaceutical industry in the UK alone, and it's only growing. It's growing because of changes in trends in the sector, new discoveries, more developments, more commercializations of therapies. On the left is a graph from the WHO of the really big target areas that the industry is focusing on currently. So where does circular economy come into this? Well, circular economy principles apply to every single element of the pharmaceutical supply chain. I'll be focusing on facilities, process, equipment and products. And I hope this gives you a gauge of the diversity within the industry and how unique and specialist the facilities, processes and products are. And fundamentally, how can us as engineers develop sustainable solutions? So an overview of different drug forms. You might recognize some of these. I'm going to be predominantly talking about tablets as that's where my experience is. But as you can see, a huge diversity of different types of pharmaceuticals. High level on processes. This is generally divided into primary and secondary. So primary is more the synthesizing or the culturing of the active pharmaceutical ingredient, whereas secondary is taking that product and putting it into a form for human consumption. For tablets, the formulation process is generally blending, mixing, granulation, compression, coating, filling and packing. There's also a number of other processes such as quality assurance, testing, the storage and distribution that all have waste streams associated with it and therefore can be targeted by CE principles. The facilities themselves, they are generally very bespoke to the product or the process. And containment is such a big element of this, and containment and the cleanliness of these facilities make them very challenging to design, but are required to meet the standards that you can see on the screen to be granted regulatory approval to be able to be manufacturing products that go into humans. This is also colloquially known as GMP facilities. In general terms, the higher the specification of facility, the higher the embodied carbon, the higher the amount of operational energy, because there's more requirement for more resilience, more redundancy, more reliance within the buildings themselves to ensure that it meets the quality requirements necessary. Here are some systems within tablet manufacturing. It's not an exhaustive list, but if you are having a product like purified water using to clean or going into a product, you have to have it of the highest purity for that process. Generally, when you are processing and purifying purified water or air, etc., there is wastage, there is inefficiencies that need to be considered. So what have I learned from my experience in the pharmaceutical sector? As a project manager, I feel that it all starts at the brief stage, so prioritizing sustainability within your project briefs, and by doing so, understanding what benchmark data your design should be going against, setting targets, monitoring them and reporting them. A number of you probably say there's not too much benchmark data out there for pharmaceuticals, and you're right in saying so. I'm currently working with the I2SL, that's an American set up to look at labs and pharmaceuticals and looking at making suitable benchmark data to make more sustainable facilities. So going into that design aspect, and I think Alan made a great point, a lot of things can be eradicated at the design stages. And this is one point, having end user engagement really can reduce and eliminate the need for over designing a pharmaceutical facility. So doing day in the life of studies, getting your operators, getting your engineers all into a room and understanding what are the requirements of the facilities, looking at designing for flexibility for not, so you're looking from year 5, 10, 15 years in the future, so you're not doing abortive works as the facility goes and grows as a facility. From a technical point of view, facility and process engineers, and having those two groups of engineers that are often very separated, integrating them together to ensure they are meeting each other's needs to eliminate waste or over design or over supply. So how can you use waste streams from process heat in facilities and vice versa to ensure that you are reusing energy or reducing waste? And last but not least, looking at the end cycle and in-use elements of a project, of a facilities project, because of the nature of a facility having to be commissioned and validated to very high quality levels, we should really be using this process not to ensure quality. Well, we should be using it to ensure quality, but also ensuring it to meet sustainability requirements that you should be setting at the start of a project. And as these facilities are very generally highly data driven, and we should be using that data not just to make quality decisions, but sustainability decisions. So you have that continuous improvement cycle as the facility continues to grow and develop. Key challenges and barriers. I'm not going to dwell on regulatory challenges too much. I can talk about that for days. But FDA, MHRA are two very common regulatory bodies. They ensure that the products we take are to the highest standards. But in doing so, the standards in which they set do restrict engineers and change to happen in the industry. Then on a top table level, there does need to be a lot more collaboration between regulatory bodies and subject matter experts in the industry to ensure that we are not just building quality, but also building facilities and processes, and at the end of the day, having products that are more sustainable. So some of the challenges there are like product sensitivity, contamination, cross-contamination, to name a few. On the regulatory point as well, regulations can change, and they do change. That is something that is an unknown risk. So in 10 years' time from your facility opening, 10 years down the line, regulations might change. And that is always an unknown risk and can be very difficult to design around. Pharmaceutical buildings are often higher risk, and so the opportunities to have low embodied carbon materials such as timber or biomaterials that you might see in the office sector are very much harder to implement, and not impossible, but harder to implement in the pharmaceutical industry. And we're very much behind the curve when it comes to those novel materials, generally due to the risk profile of them. And my last point, the long life cycle of a project. So it might take 10 years to build out a project from design, construction to validation. And there's a lot of stakeholders in that process. And having the communication from your research scientists all the way to your end operator, as you're commercializing a product that's going into a facility for commercial manufacturing, is so critical to eliminate unnecessary requirements, unnecessary waste, and having that collaboration together, in my opinion, is something that is very much needed in the industry. And last but not least, probably very common across the process industry, is technical knowledge. And we, I think, as an engineering a group of people, would always want more technical knowledge in our own sectors. Processes. So this is a typical batch process for tableting. It is called wet granulation, but there's a number of different varieties of this. Pretty much it takes a dispensing, so your active product ingredient merges it and blends it and granulates with an excipient to make a correct powder size that is dried, milled, and then mixed. And then it takes that powder, puts it into a tablet press, and generally enters into a coater. I would recommend going on YouTube to watch some videos. It's quite incredible, the process. But each of these steps do have interim checks, quality checks, and it can take around 30 days end to end in a facility. So lessons learned on this. From a high level point of view, looking at process design is very key. So continuous tablet manufacturing is a technology that is becoming more and more popular. It uses less space in facilities, but it's maybe not as suitable for all products because it's slower. It doesn't have as large a volume of batch. So this is where the approach to your product portfolio as a company or a factory is very key. So looking at scale up, scale out, or batch, small batch, large batch, and looking at how that is in terms of the future portfolio that a company is bringing in is very key from a sustainability point of view. So you are utilizing your current equipment and not having to buy more or generate more facilities to manufacture your demand. In the same way, eliminating waste using operational engineering efficiency. Lean Six Sigma, all kind of different techniques for this, and could do a whole seminar on this in itself. But in the pharmaceutical industry, if we are able to limit the amount of batch changes, ensure that we are therefore not having to clean our equipment in as much regularly due to the change of products. There's the ramp down and ramp up processes. All of these are lost times, not in just efficiency, but you're generating waste at each of these change of products. So being able to schedule and work as a production team to eliminate waste in the way that you are doing engineering interventions. Last but not least, deviation reduction. So this is regarding to do when a pharmaceutical process is not necessarily followed, or there's maybe contamination. A deviation is raised. By reducing your number of deviations, reduces the risk of products not meeting the quality criteria and therefore being chucked in the bin. So as engineers, proactive maintenance is very, very key to ensure deviation reduction. So the challenges with this is new technologies such as continuous tableting. There's long payback times, and as a new technology, if you're going to tech transfer a product onto a new technology, you have to go through the regulatory process. It's long, it's time consuming, and it is a challenge to do, as any sort of introduction of new technology is. Contamination. So I think the industry has a lot of good opportunities to reuse existing equipment and materials, either upcycling or downcycling. The problem is it's contaminated with pharmaceuticals. So the decontamination process is costly, it's time consuming, and that is just a necessary evil to reuse equipment. But I think there's a good amount of opportunity there. I think we also need to more localize supply chains. That's probably common across the pharmaceutical and other process industries. And considering also the trends in which the pharmaceutical industry are seeing. So what the industry was like 10 years ago is very different today, and it will be very different to 10 years in the future, looking at more personalized medicines or biopharmaceutical therapeutics, and having the processes and the development of those processes to future-proof yourself is very key. Outsourcing, so a lot more outsourcing is happening in the pharma industry, and when those agreements are set up, it's often about quality, but we need to, as companies, also be looking at sustainability targets of manufacturing if we are outsourcing. Some of the bigger companies as well are doing some really good innovation in terms of from circularity, but also in terms of technology. The challenge here is IP and openness of sharing due to loss of commerciality or just protecting the products that they own. Last but not least, culture, and the culture of risk aversion is such a big challenge to implementing change and implementing sustainable change. It's a position, from my experience, of if it's not broke, don't fix it, to yes, actually, as Alan's been saying, it is broken, we need to fix it. And having sustainability on the table when it is coming to those conversations is very much key when it comes to bettering of processes. The products themselves, you'll all be familiar with a blister pack. It's got a base material, often a PVC, and a sealing topper that is often aluminium foil, packaging, cardboard paper. Nothing new or surprising there. A lot more, as Martin said, there is a need or a desire to change packaging to be more sustainable. But the challenges with that is that you've got to protect the product from moisture. You've got to prevent contamination. There's an element of longevity and durability as these products are being transported globally. So when you are looking at changing packaging, you have to look at stability and making sure that your new packaging is not affecting the quality of your product through leachability of the product, the packaging into your product, for example. So that's a real big challenge in changing any sort of materiality when it comes to packaging. So to end with and to bring it back to circularity, I often go into my medicine cabinet and find a whole bunch of expired medicine, or dive into the bottom of my bag and find a crush packet of paracetamol. I know people that don't finish courses of antibiotics. Although the number of 30% on the screen is an estimate, there are a number of sources that are showing that this is the level of waste when it comes to prescription or over-the-counter medicines in the pharmaceutical industry. So we can all do our bit by buying what we need, by handing back expired medicines to a pharmacist for proper processing and recycling of the packaging, and also follow medical advice when it comes to taking medicines. So although you might not be in the pharmaceutical industry, we all play a part in making it a more sustainable industry and eliminating waste. So that is my last point, and I'm handing the floor back to Claire.
Thank you, Dan. Hey, that's quite shocking when you look at that up on the screen there, 30% of medicines. Wow. And I think as well, even in our presentation today, you know, Martin was referring to just how much food gets wasted when people are still hungry, which doesn't feel like the right thing to be doing at all. I'm quite conscious that we've got about 4 minutes left of our technical talk today, and it really has come across as a technical talk of sharing a lot of information. We're incredibly grateful to everybody who's joined our session today. As I stressed at the start, what we want to do with this group of talks is to give 3 sessions which pick on the challenges and the barriers and the lessons learned in each of the different areas of process industry. Today we've had a taster of water, food and drink and pharma, but there's oil and gas, there's bulk, there's many other areas that we can have that kind of combination. I'm encouraging you, please put your questions in, because remember what I said at the start, the final session is a full panel discussion across the whole of process industries where we really want to compare and contrast. But maybe if I just kind of finish, I know if we can sort of flick through the slides just to give you the heads up, there are a lot of other process industries webinars available for you to look at and attend, whether it's through the recordings. And I know there's another one coming up if we kind of flick through to, I think, about slide 6, which is sort of showing about methane and farming and that kind of impact. But maybe, Alan, if I could just leave that final word with you, because you are very much leading us all across the process industries in this space. And have you got a thought for today to leave our attendees with, please?
I got involved in sustainability when I was thinking about my ancestors or the generations that are going to come forward. And I did this back in 2005, and I've wondered, you know, what will life be like for my great grandchildren? And I'm now worried about my great grandchildren, because things are accelerating, climate change is accelerating. We're using the planet's resources at an alarming rate, and we just need to change behaviours as a society to realise we've only got one planet and we've got to protect it. So, yeah, we've all got to take our part as well. So that would be my final message.
I think you've landed on the head as quite a reflection for us all to take into into this afternoon. I just ask of our attendees, encourage you to come to the next sessions, and if we could just flick through with the slides to the a talk that's coming up in a couple of weeks' time on sort of
It's down to you, Tim.
and we'll pick up on that one. It's actually about sustainable livestock farming and monetizing methane emissions from manure. So there's something to think about. That's an additional webinar or additional technical talk. We'll be back with the next round of what we've been going through today about lessons and barriers in moving to a circular economy in the process sector. I think our next one is due for April, so please look out for that in the events and book yourself in and join us, please. We really want to hear what you think. Please post your questions, and in the panel session as we finish the run through this series, we really want to kind of pull together some significant ways in which engineering can help find solutions in this space. I think on that note, it's probably a thank you very much, everybody, and a particular thank you to our speakers and to Tim as well, helping us in the background. So thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Claire.
You're going to stay on, Claire.
Thanks everyone.
Martin, Daniel, do you want to stay on? Claire?
Yeah. The only trouble is we got lots of visitors.
Well, Tim, can you nicely chuck them out?
Oh, they're listening.
Yes. Yeah. Just a sec. As I try and get rid of them, they leave themselves. Just yeah, they go.
I thought we had a great number of attendees. I thought that was lots of people for lunchtime, and as was said earlier about New Year and bits and pieces, I thought that was great. Right, I'm so sorry I cut us off at the end for questions, but there was no way we were going to get anywhere near questions. I was like, oh my God, I've got to bring this to a close. So I hope that's all right. And I'm sorry, Alan, for putting you on your spot on the spot, but that was a brilliant reflection. Worrying about my grandchildren.
Yeah, thanks for that.